What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the DK Garage. I'm Jeremy.
And I'm Joe.
After a long off season, but a short off season, we are finally back, and that means NASCAR's back. How's it going, man?
Man, I'm so excited to be back. It's been a while, but it was a nice break. Lots of things have happened. We're different places in life. A lot of different things have happened on the NASCAR scene. We'll dive into all of that, but Next Gen, man, that's where we're at. We got a preview at the Clash, the Coliseum. That was an awesome event. I'm sure we'll talk about that. There's a lot of stuff to dive into. I'm excited just to be back in here, just to chat NASCAR week to week, man.
Yeah, you said it. We've gone through quite a bit over the off season and made some changes, and that's not the only thing that's changed. Like you said, NASCAR, we finally got to see the new cars in somewhat of a competition, not a real true race, but much better than just the track videos we kind of got all during the off season. And I got to say, going into the Clash, I was semi-excited about this season. I was, you kind of hearing different things, seeing different things. You're like, man, I don't know about this new car, the new look of it, and all that. But, man, I got to say, I think the Clash delivered. I think this new car is going to be fun to watch on the track this year. The paint schemes, these new designs with the numbers being moved forward, I'm still not a fan of it, but it's growing on me. So there's definitely certain brands doing a better job with the paint schemes and teams and whatnot. But I got to say, after that Clash race and the heats and all that, I'm excited for this year. I think it's going to be fun. I think we're going to see a lot more randomness, at least early part of this year, and I'm excited for that.
It's going to be fun, and the Clash was a lot of fun, and I had talked to a lot of people that really weren't fans of NASCAR, but were really excited for this event beforehand, and then during. People talked to me throughout that really enjoyed aspects of it that you get at a traditional racetrack in a setting close to home. And I think NASCAR did a fantastic job of putting this event on, and you heard it from all the drivers. I think they were really, optimistic on how it might play out, but I think it blew past their expectations even for most of the drivers. And so it led to an awesome event. I think everybody enjoyed getting the exposure of the new car, getting to see, like you said, those paint jobs, seeing the Camaros, the Mustangs, the Camrys in person so a lot of people the first time. And so I know a couple of kiddos of mine, they were excited to see the new paint jobs, see the Camaro actually look kind of like the Camaro on the street. That was something that was really something that caught their attention. So NASCAR is doing a good job of trying to, get out there to a broader audience. And I think this is really bringing it to the forefront. And I think it's going to pay dividends as we get throughout the season. But there are some stuff to worry about, too. We did see some issues mechanically. And I think we were concerned about that throughout the preseason, kind of. Where are we going to be with this? Is it going to be an issue week to week? And we saw it immediately at the Clash. They did some pretty aggressive testing and everything through the offseason. And then at the track, they were pushing boundaries, trying to figure out where they could be on the track, really working those cars. So I wasn't surprised to see some mechanical failures, but they weren't at the right time for some of the drivers, unfortunately.
Yeah, I did... I dabbled a little bit. I built a few lineups for DraftKings for this. No way we were going to put out any content because how do you know, we're about having fun, but we're also about being smart with our bankroll. And this was definitely not a race where we would feel comfortable giving anyone advice. So I was like, hey, I'll just build some lineups for fun. And one of the guys who unfortunately... he didn't help me, but he was looking really good, was Tyler Reddick, one of those guys that you're kind of talking about. He was kind of the class of the field early on in the main race, and really in practice and in his heat race. They got some speed at RCR. I think his teammate ended up finishing third, and Austin Dillon did not look that great throughout the weekend. So for him to finish third, and how well Reddick ran, watch out for that team. But, it was an okay day, whatever. It was mostly, again, just about having fun. But I do expect to see some of that early on this year because even though they had the practices and all that, there's no way you can truly simulate race scenarios because they're thinking. I guess the thought is him warming up his tires on right before restart. They didn't do any of that in practice because why would you? Like, there's really no point to do that. So that was never tested, and then lo and behold, after a weekend of getting on it and doing that kind of stuff with that new transaxle, didn't quite hold up. I know with it being so early on, NASCAR and these teams, they're going to all work together to make sure that little things like that don't happen. But I do expect there to be a little bit more mechanical issues as they figure out this new car. But the biggest concern, which is I think a little less concern now at this point in the year than it was early on in testing, is are they even going to have enough cars? I'm sure most people who are watching this, they realize like, hey, there's probably something they've been wanting that they're not able to get their hands on. Supply chain issues are pretty much affecting everybody in some capacity, NASCAR included. So that may be one of those things that we have to kind of watch for early in the year as these teams build up inventory of cars and spare parts and stuff like that. Some of these teams, they may be using components that may not be the best early on. So that's going to be exciting, but it also makes, playing different NASCAR games, if you will, that makes it a little bit more challenging.
It makes it more challenging, and it also something that we talked about last year that we anticipated happening with this new next-gen car is the parity between teams. And we saw that right out of the gate. We saw Daniel Suarez be very competitive, very fast throughout the week at the Clash, and also Justin Haley. All these, the Rick Ware Racing stable looked good. But again, we're talking about a very small exhibition race. Nothing that we put our eyes on in a super speedway or anything, but I'm wondering how that parity plays into the mix whenever you're talking about these smaller teams not having the resources and the amount of cars that these larger teams like Gibbs and Hendrick and Penske have. So that could lend itself at some point, maybe a couple races into these smaller teams being in really tough situations, not having backup cars, sharing cars. It's going to be very difficult for them to manage that throughout the early part of the season.
So I probably we should ask this kind of maybe before we got into this, but I got to ask you though. I know we both enjoyed the Clash. We both thought it was good. I know that this has been thrown out there. I have my opinion. I'm curious to hear yours. Do you think NASCAR should try to make this an actual race, whether it's at the Coliseum or some sort of other stadium race, but this ultra short track, quarter mile, something like that? Should they make this an actual race in the future? Or should, if they do it again, it stay as an exhibition race?
It's got to be an exhibition race. You had 23 cars on the track. You can't really get up to near 40. I think that'd be a stretch. It would be possible. It just, I don't think it makes for good racing. The people that I also talked to were giving me input throughout their new experience and exposure. They said it was all right racing, but I don't know if they want to see a 400-mile event, a 250-mile event even. That would be something that would be quite a few laps that I don't know if people have the patience for it. So that would be something I think they stick to that kind of exhibition style, but maybe move it around. Go to some of these larger stadiums. SoFi Stadium, even there in LA, would be really awesome. These big dome stadiums that have these roofs on them that will open up. You might be able to get some exposure kind of like the Supercross guys do. So I think it opens the door to getting into markets that they haven't been into before, and it's more of an opportunity that if they can do it and it's successful where the races are maybe shortened, it could be something that they add a couple of these events to the schedule. But I think for now it's set up kind of for an exhibition style.
What about an all-star race?
That'd be kind of fun.
Yeah, because I think if you did want to do some sort of point style race, you would have to. You could not obviously have 40 cars, so you would still have to do it similar to how they do it. So there'd be like extra tiers, I guess, for different bonus points and stuff like that. So it'd have to be a ultra special race. But I agree. Like, if you're gonna run these kind of style of races and these cars, it can't be like an actual real race. They're just a little too big. I mean, they're too fast. They need to get up and get going. But it was fun. It was a cool way to, I think, test out the new car without putting too much stress on these things. I'm sure they got a lot of data, these teams, with some of the cars breaking. I know Hamlin had issues. Obviously, we saw Justin Haley. You mentioned he was running really good, way better than I was. I really think that Haley's going to have a great season, but I wasn't quite expecting them with this brand new car to come out and be this competitive. But I think that's a little concerning how much his car got damaged taking that hit on the inside wall. It's a hard hit, no doubt, but that wasn't at the speeds that you're going to be at with Daytona, these mile and a half tracks, what it's going to happen to these cars. Because one thing I did like, and I know we're going to get to see a lot more of this throughout the year, there was a lot of rubbing. Guys were leaning on each other. I mean, you had to. Such a short track. No cut tires.
Composite body, baby.
No flat tires. No tire issues, really, so to speak. I think there was a couple guys who had issues, but it wasn't really because of that. They didn't cut a tire. If they had done this with the old cars, everybody would have had cut tires at some point. So it would definitely not have worked out. So that really makes me say, okay, we're going to get some more intense style racing, more rubbing like we get to see in the Xfinity series, which not every week, but there's been some really good races over the last few years in Xfinity series because these guys can lean on each other more. We're finally going to get to see that in Cup. So I think that's really going to be fantastic to watch throughout the year.
Absolutely. I'm super excited to see that composite body and to have it at an event like the Clash in a small setting in a really shortened event allowed those drivers to really get to test that composite body, how far they can go with it. They put it up against the wall a couple times, and you didn't see the amount of cut tires you would typically see at an event like that, and I was really ecstatic to see that because, like you said, it's going to lend itself to some really awesome finishes. Guys are going to put their nose out there a little bit more, move some guys out of the way. That's going to lend itself to even more chaos, I think, in the DFS setting and in the whole entire environment because we're taking into more parameters that are in the mix this year that haven't been there, especially with this next-gen car. There's a lot of different dynamics in play this year.
Yeah, and the other thing I didn't mention, but besides the tires not getting cut down, we saw, because it was a short track, a lot of bumping. I don't know how these cars are going to react at higher speeds on, super speedways, mile and a halves when they get bumped. But at least at short tracks, and I'm kind of assuming these bigger tracks, if they bump, they're not going to destroy the nose of their car. There was some hard shots, and maybe couldn't tell always with camera angles, but man, it didn't look like there was hardly any front end damage from anyone giving people shots, booting them out of the way. And these guys weren't going that fast, so that's a lot of force hitting that front bumper, and it seemed to hold up great. So that also really excites me for some of the aggressiveness that we're going to get out of these drivers like Clash winner Joey Logano and the guy who was really the class of the field really all weekend, Kyle Busch. We know these guys are aggressive. They were definitely aggressive. Got a pretty good little battle towards the end. But Joey Logano, what can you say, man? I mean, he won the first dirt race, and he gets to win the first race at the Coliseum. I don't know what their speed's going to be like on these bigger tracks, but if they got speed, he's this kind of, I think, car suits his style of racing where he can be a little bit more aggressive with some of these guys.
Yeah, it's going to be fun to watch because I think you're right. Some of these drivers that are a little bit more on the aggressive side will be able to be a little bit more, lean on their tendencies a little bit more, and I think it's going to really give us some solid racing. I really expect a lot out of the drivers this year, especially if the car holds up. I think they're going to work these little bugs out mechanically, and a few races into the season we'll probably get to more of a normal status, but I think there might be some advantages and disadvantages going into this first part of the season as we approach it from multiple angles to grow our bankrolls, and that's kind of why we started this podcast and our show is kind of figure out how we can continue to do so. Growing our bankrolls, why we enjoy having a little bit of fun on the side while we're taking in something we enjoy every week. And it's going to change a little bit because there are a lot of different unknowns, especially this first part of the season. But again, it's Daytona. We always have those unknowns. So this week is a little bit, or this first race is going to be a little bit of an opportunity for us to have some fun and kind of get more of exposure to the car. But do you go as heavy?
Yeah, that's going to be interesting to see before we have to commit to any sort of lineup builds. Of course, we'll get the qualifying, then we get the duels, and then once we know where the field's set, we'll have a little bit more idea of how some of these guys are going to be driving, especially with the duels, because these are like little mini races. I don't know how aggressive everyone's going to be in the duels just because of how we're talking about. Like, yeah, some of these guys are going to have backup cars, but they do not have a plethora of cars in their stable yet. So I think there may be quite a few guys out there who are just like content getting a decent starting spot. They don't have to be super aggressive, especially the guys that are already locked in to the Daytona 500, whether it's with the charter or whatever it might be. But obviously the guys who have to race their way in, a little bit different story. So at least we'll get to see some of that. But you kind of talk about surprises, and what I think is going to make this year really exciting is because this car is supposed to make the field more even. There's not supposed to be a huge gap between teams like Hendrick Motorsports, Joe Gibbs Racing, and Petty Racing or Spire, or some of these teams that are competitive at times, but for the most part, we know they're going to be finishing more than likely outside the top 15 unless something crazy happens. Well, the first race of the year, Eric Jones for the new Petty GMS finished fourth. Didn't look that great in practice at all, but got it done. His new teammate, Ty Dillon, didn't make the main. Should have. Kind of cheated a little bit with some restarting issues.
We love Ty Dillon, though.
We do. Was bummed because he was so aggressive. He was by far like the most aggressive driver, and I think it's because he's been out of the sport for, I guess, a year or 2 years now. I always loved it when he was in there because DraftKings always had him at price at the exact right spot. Like, he was always hitting value. So it's good to see him back in there. But the point is like, obviously this is an exhibition race. They don't race on any tracks like this the rest of the year. But man, to get a fourth at the Clash when a lot of these guys would love to have been the guy who won the first Clash, that's pretty good in my book. And I think that's going to make this year a little bit also tricky because it's like we can't just rely on the guys finishing where they're at. Like, the data, we'll use the data, but I don't think the data is going to be as useful as it has been in the past because I think we're going to see more competition throughout.
So how do you adjust this year, since there are going to be so many different dynamics that are going to be up against us that haven't been there traditionally? What are you going to do to kind of get the upper hand to grow your bankroll? Like, how are you planning on diversifying?
Well,
or approaching it? Like, what's your thought?
Well, I think there's really two ways to approach it. There's two basic ways to approach this. You either play lighter, kind of see how things play out, or you just go heavier because you're expecting more randomness, more cars failing, and you're just trying to cast a wider net. I think either approach is fine. I think it personally just depends on where you're at with your bankroll and kind of what you're trying to do. I will probably be early on. I mean, I would expect Daytona still go pretty heavy for Daytona because it's Daytona. You're going to have some of the best contests from DraftKings at the first race of the year. This is the biggest race of the year. So Daytona is going to go heavy. But when we start going to Auto Club and some of these other races, like, I'm going to, even with practice, I think I'll still probably approach it a little lighter, a little bit more conservative, and maybe even shift my ownership, or not ownership, but my bankroll to other places like Prize Picks or, doing some single bets or whatever it might be. I might do something more along that way than go real heavy on DraftKings. What's kind of your thought process on that?
I like it because I think you do have to diversify from a traditional standpoint based on if you're looking at a budget to play with every week. I think going to a prize picks based kind of system where you have less drivers that are needed to make a lineup, you can go that route. And then you also, like you said, you have practice to get to witness, and you have qualifying, so you can find some value a lot easier potentially there. That's something that I think you and I will focus a lot of time on this year, and we'll provide that information to you in our race guide. That's going to be back, and I'm excited to bring that back too. We'll have that out for weekly, and it's just going to be fun to kind of dabble in that pool a little bit more, because I think that's where a lot more value is. Instead of having to pick the 6 drivers in a DraftKings lineup, I'm still going to have exposure there, but I don't think I'm going to have as much because I'm looking for value. How is my money going to work for me? And I don't see as much this year there, especially early. I think Daytona is a little bit of a different animal than the rest of the season early. We all are used to kind of a lot of stuff happening at the end of Daytona races typically. So I think we'll play that typically like I normally do. But after that, I'm a little bit more hesitant, and I've already kind of started diversifying, knowing that this year is going to be a little bit different, and seeing how F1's really taken off and that sport has done a lot. And I see the things that NASCAR's kind of trying to do and copy that. So to me, I started diversifying in what you see on the walls a little bit, memorabilia and sports cards, primarily sports cards. And NASCAR being that something I really like, that market's really been lacking a lot in the space of the sports card market. And so I thought, hey, why don't I spend a little bit of money that I would traditionally spend weekly on DFS and start doing this a little bit. And I think that's going to pay dividends as the sport continues to grow. It's an area that hasn't traditionally seen a lot of market presence, and I think as it gets more exposure in markets like LA and these other markets that traditionally haven't been NASCAR markets, these places have a lot more money, and I think are going to take to the sport and want to invest in it as well. We see Michael Jordan getting involved. We see Pitbull. Now we see the money team himself coming in for the Daytona experience. He's throwing a team together. Floyd Mayweather. Man, it's going to be awesome seeing how many other big names get into the sport. So I think if you paid any attention to the sports card market at all, those F1 cards were the top get basically from the summer on. And so I think this market makes up for what is lacking in the DFS area. And I'm sure we'll be talking about it quite often throughout the season, because I think that's something that we've already added to our portfolio. So we'll talk to everybody else about it week to week.
Well, yeah, I guess first and foremost, if you're playing DraftKings or doing any of these other things to pay your bills, and this isn't really your full-time job, you probably shouldn't be going too heavy in this. So that our advice isn't necessarily for you, and our advice would probably be make sure that this is fun money, because you can definitely go through some cold streaks. And like I said, there's a lot more randomness early, so being super accurate on what's going to happen, super accurate as we can be. I mean, we had some really good weeks last year, but there's things were a little bit more predictable. For right now, early on, it's going to be less predictable. But if you are playing this for fun, I got to say, it's pretty cool to take some profits, and instead of just taking some profits and putting in your bank account and then going and spending it on something stupid, why not take that same money that you don't necessarily need for anything else and buying some of these type cards? Because you're right, the card market really since early to mid 2020 has just really exploded with a lot of new interest in a lot of sports, but NASCAR has still kind of been that one that's been lagging back just a little bit. And with the changes that NASCAR's doing, and you mentioned it, F1, how they've really exploded in the American scene. We know NASCAR's negotiating new TV contracts. We know there's going to be a Bubba Wallace documentary coming out. I think they're already talking about having a document or docu-series later this year coming out on Peacock that's going to be similar to Drive to Survive. So once people start to see these guys, get to know their stories, and see them in a different way than just on Sunday at the race, I think we're going to see a lot more interest in these style of cars. First of all, NASCAR cars are sick. I mean, a lot of these other sports have some cool stuff too, but you can't have cars in them. And so you get the cars and the drivers in there. Like it's cool. And then, yeah, if you invest your profits from one of these, Prize Picks, DraftKings, whatever, there's a good chance that profit is going to continue to make you profit, and that's really kind of the whole goal anyway.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's been something that I've rekindled. I've kind of been in the hobby my entire life, but been rekindled as of late, and it's been fun to dabble in it again and just getting exposure to all of it all over. But you're right. I think the Drive to Survive, that F1 experience that people were thriving for, now NASCAR understands, and they're really going to be attacking that. But these NASCAR drivers are going to be way more relatable to people than these F1 drivers. These guys are from North Carolina. They can talk to you about blue-collar stuff that a lot of these F1 guys, they're from different countries, and you don't get to relate to them on that level as much as some of these other NASCAR drivers do. So I think being able to pick your favorite driver that you know where he's from, and you are able to watch his car camera and some of these things that these TV contracts will bring to light will really help the sport grow tremendously back to some of the levels that we potentially saw early on whenever I was growing up with it. I think that's where we potentially could be, and it's going to be fun to watch it grow.
I want to be clear. As I say this, I got into F1. I've always kind of watched a race here and there. But this past year, like many others, and for me personally, it had nothing to do with Drive to Survive. I haven't even watched that many episodes. I just like good racing. And, with doing this, we got a deeper immersed in the auto racing world, which is just, there's so many great series. And obviously F1 is one of those. But in my opinion, the big downside to F1 is if you're not a fan of Lewis Hamilton or Max Verstappen these last couple years, your guy had not the best shot of winning the race. Now, they might have a good finish. You might be happy with a 5th or 6th, and hey, I get it. This competition is hard, but I think with this new car, what they're doing in NASCAR, you can be a fan of the rookie Harrison Burton coming in. He looked pretty aggressive. I don't know exactly what we're going to get at him this year, but it's like, okay, well, you saw the aggressiveness. Daniel Suarez, we know he's got a big following, being the only driver who's not from the United States, from Mexico. So he gets a huge following, and he's now with Pitbull and whatnot. So if you're a fan of him, when he was racing a couple years ago in the 96, you knew he was never going to win a race unless everyone else wrecked in front of him. But now, holy crap, he's got a legit shot. And so I think that's the advantage that NASCAR has over F1 is there's more drivers to choose from, and there's more equal competition throughout the field. So if you are a Stenhouse Jr. guy, he can be competitive. You're not just hoping for a 15th place finish and, hey, that's pretty good. No, he has a legit chance to finish top 5, top 3, even compete for the win at tracks that he really excels at.
Yeah, and that's the thing that I'm excited to see is some of these veterans that are in new spots to see how they adapt and what they bring to the table. So Kurt Busch going over to the 2311 Racing, joining Bubba Wallace over there with Michael Jordan. That's going to be fun to watch. I want to see how he is able to adapt because he's been a playoff driver in Chip Ganassi's past and in all the other rides he's pretty much been in. He's been successful. So I want to see if that's something that he's been or able to do this year. And then also like another guy that's going into an ownership role, Brad Keselowski, an experienced driver. Is he able to put that team in a playoff scenario towards the end of the season? Those are things that are going to be fun to watch. New guys or old guys in new spots, I think, are going to be really, I guess, set the tone. Let us know where things are at in regards to some of the parity maybe. And it's going to be really key to kind of understand that from a DraftKings scenario too, because I don't want to say, hey, I'm not playing that at all. I'm going to give my full effort throughout the whole season. I know you are too. Into trying to put this whole piece together, we're going to give our effort into making the race guide and all that fun stuff every week. So I want it to work out. I just don't know how heavy I'll be, and we'll be giving you that information whenever we can to make sure that, hey, this week might not be the best because of what we've seen so far, but that's something we'll continue to provide as we continue to try to give you information to grow the bankroll.
We're always going to try to provide our most, our honest opinion on a race.
Unbiased.
Exactly, like what we really think is going to happen. But obviously, we have no crystal ball, so we can't tell you for sure. But just given our experience in NASCAR and, I think we have a pretty good eye for a lot of tendencies. But, we'll be recalibrating throughout the year. Like you said, we'll provide the content, but I think the thing that's going to happen this year is if we're starting to see like, man, we're doing better in this avenue or this one, well, that's if we feel more comfortable that week, then that's where we're going to have more of our focus on, because the goal is to help you guys win money while watching a badass race. So if that's on this side or this way or whatever, we'll be honest with you each and every week. But I'm glad you kind of brought up those two teams because kind of forgot about them, but most of the teams surprised me in a good way. But in my opinion, and I'm curious to hear what you think, 2311 looked off. Even Kurt Busch, I think he ended up, no, did he win his? No, I guess he didn't end up getting in there. But I know like Bubba was off. Kurt Busch never looked strong, and Brad K looked off the entire weekend. Those were sort of my two biggest concerned teams, judging off what we saw at the Clash. I don't expect that the whole year, but it's like, what the heck, man? What was your thoughts on their performance?
Well, I think I was alluding to is we're going to get a good gauge of where we're at with their development. Whatever they're able to communicate to their teams to fix these cars, to be able to be competitive every week. These two guys are two of the best at being able to communicate what they need to get it done. And so I think we'll see how many issues come down to cars and what comes down to drivers. And if it's really that 2311 doesn't have the cars to stack up to Gibbs, I think Kurt Busch will be probably on the forefront of trying to beat down the door to the playoffs this year before Bubba is. But you never know. It's going to be fun to watch, and I think it's going to be a good gauge of where these teams and car developments are overall.
Yeah, I just was kind of just taken back a little bit because it's like, okay, well, I understand they won a race last year, but Colleague is still in their first full-time year, and Justin Haley looked really good. Even Allmendinger, he ended up finishing 9th. He started 21st. Obviously, Haley wrecked. Really wasn't his fault. Larson kind of came down on him and sent him into that inside wall, but he was running like top 3 that up to that point. Even in his qualifying and his practice times, like they were super competitive. I would have expected that more out of 2311 or the new RFK Racing or whatever they're calling themselves. And it's just flat. And it's like, we kind of saw this a little. And then even Trackhouse looked great because they're on the same kind of schedule.
Dude, it's an exhibition race, man.
Yeah,
you can't take
the speed,
too much.
But the speed, man.
You can't take too much into it. These are a lot of the drivers' first exposure to this. So if you're blaming everything, like that's what I'm saying, is there's going to be a lot of opportunity for these drivers to communicate how this will develop and get further down the road. Where I think, like we said, this parity, we saw those smaller teams be able to compete and look really fast. So I think we'll get this dialed in a little bit more.
But my point also is this same sort of thing happened last year with 2311. New team, new car, Trackhouse. They started out really strong. Then they kind of faded for whatever reason. I know they ended up having quite a few mechanical problems later in the year that really hurt their chances. But at what point in the season did that 23 car start to get competitive? Because it seemed to take a while. I know he ended up winning late in the year at a super speedway race, but they did not look very competitive. And so it's like, okay, you saw improvements, cool, but then they're already showing up, yes, to an exhibition race, but you're telling me that they didn't want to show out in front of the LA Coliseum where they can really grow their fan base. You got one of the biggest young stars from like a fan base perspective in Bubba Wallace. You got Michael Jordan. You know they're going to try to do their best, and I know how good Kurt Busch is, and even he was struggling. I know they will get better, but it's like, how long is that going to take? Is it going to take half the year, 3/4 of the year, kind of like it did last year? Because that's not great if we're seeing that from that team when Colleague is coming in and putting up some numbers already. That's just kind of my point. It's like that just was surprising. I know it's exhibition, but man.
You're right, and that's the thing that's going to allow us to see. We're going to watch that week to week, and we're going to watch these teams develop, watch what we're witnessing, and try to convey that every week to the audience. And we want that opinion. What do you want to see more of? Do you want to see more Prize Pick stuff? Do you want to see more DraftKings stuff? We're planning on involving some sports card things throughout the season. It's going to be fun seeing how all of this stuff develops with this next gen car. It's just all new audience. Potential is so great for NASCAR, and I'm excited to see how 2022 shapes up because, man, there were a lot of changes this offseason. I think we touched on a lot of the teams that added drivers and where drivers have landed, but the dynamics this year are unlike any other.
I am, like I said at the beginning, I wasn't super excited about this year based on what I saw in the practice sessions, the test sessions in the off season. But how they kind of came out as a unit at the beginning of the year, I'm really excited to see how things unfold. So that being said, and this is I think gonna be fun to look back on and see how wrong we are. But we did do a list with our playoff drivers. Would you like to get into that, or was there anything else you wanted to say about the Clash or any of the new cars before we jump into this? Because this is gonna be fun. Because who knows? I actually made mine. I think you may have too. We actually made it before the Clash race. I'm not, like you said, exhibition. I'm not taking too much into this. So I'll stand by my picks, but was there any last thoughts that you had on the Clash?
No, I think we covered a lot of it. I am really excited to get into the picks because this year, like we alluded to, there's a lot of things that are going to play out that we have no idea. So going back and looking back on this is probably going to be kind of fun because who knows where it will be. But I think how do you want to get going on this?
Well, I think we'll start with our locks. I think that's, and when we say locks, it's like, well, who really knows how this season's going to go? But when you got 16 spots available, I think we can safely assume that at least I feel like my 4, they're going to find a way in, whether it's pointing their way in or a win and you're in. So my 4, I'll start with my first one. I know we're going to be a little bit the same on these, but I got the defending champ, Kyle Larson. Looked fast even on a short track, which is not really his specialty. Still had speed. I don't see any reason why he can't pick up at least a couple wins this year. I definitely have Larson as a lock for the playoffs.
Yeah, I have Larson as well. He's somebody that I think we're going to get consistent speed out of. He's going to be able to put the car where he needs to, communicate what he needs to his crew chief, and just be on a successful team. I think he's a lock for me. The second driver, I think, was right there with him last year. I really am going to want to watch early on in the season how Gibbs is able to do, because I got Denny Hamlin as a lock, and I think he is somebody that man, he's going to put it out there. We know that. He's going to make some decisions that we're going to question from time to time, but he knows how to win races. I think he's going to lock himself in early. I just don't know when. It could be right out of the gate at Daytona. He's great there, obviously. So I really like Denny Hamlin.
Obviously, I got Denny Hamlin as well. Just something to note, he didn't win his first race until the playoffs last year, and he still, despite Kyle Larson winning almost every race, he still was in contention late in the year to win the regular season championship. Still made the Final Four. for I don't know how many years in a row. I know at least 2. I think it's a little bit more than that. But if you take away the championships, because this isn't, the championship isn't decided on season-long performance. It is, you get the playoffs and all this other stuff. If you just look at the last 2 years, and that's not completely fair because Larson obviously was out most of 2020, I don't think there's actually been a better driver than Denny Hamlin, because he was up there as one of the best, if not the best, the year before. With him and Kevin Harvick were winning every week. He wasn't winning, but man, he was getting top 5s left and right last year until the playoffs when he actually started getting some wins. So I don't see really any reason why, unless Denny just has a ton of mechanical issues throughout the year, I don't see any way that he does not make the playoffs.
The third driver, I think we all agree on, is Chase Elliott. He's driving for Team Hendrick. He's been the champion as of late. Recently, he's young. I think he's primed and ready to go this season. He looks really confident in his abilities this year already. I think he's ready to go. It seemed like he was pretty enthused about the season from the little bit of time they chatted with him at the Clash and just seeing some stuff throughout the offseason. I think he's kind of getting dialed in and is excited for things with this new car, and we'll see how it leads.
I got Chase as well. I mean, there's so many road courses on this schedule again this year. He's got a little bit more competition than he has in the last few years, but you got to think he's going to get it done at least one of those places, so that'll lock him in the playoffs. But one thing I do want to see from him is a win on a non-road course. I think that's what really hurt that team throughout the year, is they couldn't quite get it done on the ovals, whether it was bigger or shorter. A lot of it has to do with their teammate just being so strong. I get that. He had times. He could have won the Coke 600, was really good, but hey, Larson was better. So we do agree on those. Now, where we finally have our first difference in our locks is this last 2 driver in our 4 here. I got Martin Truex as a lock. I know you got someone different, but to be fair, we both still have these guys making the playoffs. But my 4th lock is Martin Truex, and you're going to go with who?
I'm going with Ryan Blaney. I think Ryan Blaney was somebody last year that made a big step, and I think that with Brad Keselowski leaving, he steps up into a situation where he's right behind Joey Logano in the pecking order with Austin Cindric coming in as a rookie. I think he's going to get a little bit more attention that he potentially needed, and a little bit more funding potentially to... He was on the cusp last year, really was there, and I think this year he might push the envelope to get into the Final Four and nudge Truex out. And Truex didn't have the greatest of Clash, but again, it's early. I'm not going to contribute that much to that, and I didn't have him in this scenario before. I picked this way before the Clash, and I think that's something that we're going to find out as the season goes, how dialed in Ryan Blaney is this year.
I expect Blaney to have a pretty long, successful career in NASCAR, but I really think that we're on the cusp of he's got to take that next step. Came in similar time frame as Chase Elliott. Chase Elliott already got a championship. Blaney's been competitive. Has never looked quite as good. Obviously, they're in different equipment, but hey, Logano won a championship not that long ago in the same equipment. So I think we need to see a little bit more from Blaney this year. He needs to take that. He doesn't have to, in my opinion, make the championship 4, but he's got to be right on the cusp. If he ends up getting out because of a wreck at Martinsville or something like that, so be it. But he needs to be a little bit more dominant throughout the year. And I do think that he will in this new car. So I completely understand why you went with him as a lock. But as it comes to our next 4 drivers, kind of calling this our almost locks. And like I said, I did put these together before the Clash. But I have as my first driver, Kyle Busch.
Yeah, Kyle Busch, he's going to be somebody that's going to take advantage of the situation this year. I think he's going to put his nose out there. We talked about how aggressive he is earlier in the episode. I think he just gets the job done this year. And it's just, is he going to be competitive enough to get down to the Final Four? We'll find out. It's going to be fun to watch.
Also, something to consider. I don't know if this is extra motivation or maybe actually works against them, but unless something crazy happens, this is the last year of the Candyman. M&M's, Mars, they've already said that this is their last year, so we're not going to see the yellow M&M's car anymore. We're not going to see the Snickers or Skittles or anything like that. So that's a big hit for that 18 team. They know they're secure through this year. I'm sure they've already got some other deals in place for the years after. None of that's really come out and been announced yet, at least as far as I'm aware of. But you got to think that's going to be some extra motivation because he's going to be working a little bit more to get those sponsors throughout the year. So I think that helps them, but it's certainly not something that they probably were looking forward to having to do.
Yeah, it was a disappointment letting the little one know that the M&M's car is no longer going to be after this year. So he's going to have an impact. I think he's going to have a little bit more motivation to get the job done.
Next driver I got is Joey Logano, the Clash winner. He's a great driver. He goes overlooked a lot, and I think it's just because early on in his career he ruffled a lot of fans' feathers, and they don't really always want to give him the credit that he deserves. But he is definitely one of the top drivers in the field, and if these cars are pretty equally competitive, I think he's going to get plenty of wins. So I don't have him quite as a lock, but man, it's right up there with him. So I definitely got Logano making the playoffs.
Yeah, me and you agree on him as well. I think he's somebody that we both feel is going to be really in a good situation this year, especially with the new car. We already saw him be successful in multiple events over the last few seasons in new settings. Lends kind of to his upper hand, I think. The next two drivers, though, are
already talked about, but
yep.
different kind of scenarios.
So Martin Truex Jr. barely didn't make the cut for me because into that first initial four because I think he's kind of in a weird spot. He's on the way out, and he was talking about potentially not being there for this season. And so I know he's excited about this, but if he's already kind of hitting the retirement, is he already kind of there? I don't think so, but that might just be enough for me to put him in the 8, not the 4.
Yeah. Now, I don't know if this was your thought process. This wasn't quite my thought process. My locks, I'm not saying those are my championship 4. I just think that they will be locks to make the playoffs. Maybe you have a little bit different viewpoint because I still think Truex could make it. But I don't know if at this point I would put him in my championship 4, but I would put him in the playoffs because, again, a lot of road courses. We know he's good on short tracks. And, hey, it's Martin Truex. I didn't expect much out of him last year, and I think he rattled off 4 wins. Another thing we didn't talk about, quick side note, one cool thing that we don't have to worry about this year other than super speedways in Atlanta, there's not different horsepower packages. They're running, I think it's 670 horsepower everywhere. So that could change up how the strategy is of these teams because you won't have Joe Gibbs focusing on 750 horsepower packages and then Hendrick kind of doing the same but putting maybe more focus in on 550 tracks compared to Joe Gibbs. So we don't have to worry about that dynamic. Teams don't have to worry about that dynamic. So that I think that it's going to have a bigger impact than what maybe a lot of people are going to expect right away. Because that's how Truex made championship 4 last year. They were just so good on those high horsepower tracks. So something to consider. I got Blaney as one of my guys. We already talked about him. I am looking for him to make a step forward this year. I think he could make that championship 4, but he's definitely an almost lock. Now, where I say we're kind of different is our last of these almost lock guys, both Hendrick guys, both young Hendrick guys, but we differ. I'm going with Alex Bowman in the 48, but you are going with
William Byron. I think he made a big step forward last year. We saw him be consistent across multiple track types, was fast in a lot of settings. That just shows you the ability and the skill set that he does have and why he was signed at such an early age to take over for a nice Hendrick ride. And he was kind of an odd one out, and now I think he's really made his presence known. I think this year he's going to be somebody to contend with.
Completely agree with all that. The one thing I would say is he didn't win 4 races like Alex Bowman did, and no one really expected that. No one expects that this year. I think he gets a couple surprise wins again. He's a talent. That's a great car, great team. Greg Ives is solid crew chief. I think Alex Bowman, he's going to have another pretty strong year, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's still kind of inconsistent like last year. So I think there will be some frustrations if you're playing Alex Bowman at certain races where you think he's going to do good and then he finishes 16th or something. So, but I think he makes the playoffs. These are guys, these next four guys we're going to talk about, they are guys that should make it. They have all the equipment there. They got the talent. They got the speed as far as we can tell. But things can always get a little funky. But I know our first couple guys are the same. I've got Kevin Harvick and Christopher Bell as sort of my front two, making it as the should make it.
Yeah, I've got those two guys as well. I think they, obviously Kevin Harvick's a veteran that will be able to communicate what he needs to in the number one car at the Stewart-Haas stable. I think that's pretty much should make it, in my opinion. We saw that they didn't have the wins that were accustomed to them having last year, but with this new car, we'll see how it stacks up. And then Christopher Bell is somebody I get excited about watching every week. I think he's a really good talent, and he brings a lot to the table. We saw him with a road course win early last year, which surprised a lot of people, and I think he's just a real well-rounded driver that brings a lot to the table.
I agree with that. I will say, though, if he gets in a little bit of a slump, that could be tough because I agree he's got the talent, but he's still young. Does he have sort of that, wouldn't be a sophomore, but kind of almost a sophomore slump? Because that first year, he wasn't with Joe Gibbs. He's with another Toyota team, a little bit lesser of a team. Did well there, all things considered, but had a great year last year with Joe Gibbs. I think he has another one, but again, to me, it's a little iffy. The next two guys we just got done talking about, I got William Byron. You have Alex Bowman. Kind of already went there, but we do differ on our fourth driver. Again, I made this before the Clash. Now I'm a little bit worried. We just talked about it, but I do still have Kurt Busch making the playoffs. I think he will do enough with that team. Whether he gets a win to get in or points his way in, I think he still makes it. He might get bounced out of the first round. I don't know, but I just find it hard to believe that Kurt Busch doesn't find a way to get in.
I am a little bit more optimistic in the should make it category for Austin Dillon. I think that he was somebody a few years ago I would have been crazy to put him there, but I think his development as a race car driver has
He missed it last year.
He did, but I think him and Reddick were right there. They were battling each other, and it's just one of those situations where I feel he's developed more and in the right settings that I didn't think he would be as in some of the situations he is in some of these events, and really has shined. And instead of shooting himself in the foot like he did early on in his career by being too aggressive, he's learned to settle down and take what he gets. And I like that a lot about Austin Dillon. I think he's progressed where I think he should make it.
Yeah, that's tough for me to say for sure. I actually don't have him in my playoffs, but I wouldn't be surprised, especially seeing the speed that we got from RCR as a whole at the Clash. But again, how much can we really take from it? Definitely don't hate that pick, but personally didn't end up there as well. And then as we get into our last four, we're kind of calling this our wild card. I'm taking a little bit what I was kind of considering some, I don't want to say Hail Marys, because I think these guys are better than a Hail Mary call, but maybe some drivers you wouldn't necessarily expect. Now, this guy, obviously, the first guy I'm going to talk about, was in the playoffs last year. We just talked about him, Tyler Reddick. I think he'll have the speed. I think he's going to get a win this year. He's been close, whether it's on a road course or mile and a half. I think he finds a way to get it done at some point this year. I think he'll be in the playoffs. I know you're landed there, too. You just talked about him. I was surprised that you went with the next guy that I have, but Austin Cindric. I got him in his rookie year making the playoffs. I know I'm picking him because there's like 12, 15, 30 road course races this year, whatever it is. He's really good on those. What was your reasoning for putting Austin Cindric in your wild card playoffs?
Austin Cindric has been the staple of toughness, dedication, and everything that you can think of at the lower levels of NASCAR. I think he's landed that Penske ride for a reason. He's a good race car driver and very consistent. I really see a lot in him and his development. And to be able to jump right into the number 2 car that has a lot of history and be able to take that on, I think he's going to win early. I really think he's going to be somebody to watch, especially with some of the parity that we're going to be seeing throughout the season. I think he takes full advantage of that.
And we saw him in a couple races last year be strong.
In the Cup Series.
Cup Series, yeah, absolutely. He was strong at COTA. We saw him up front. Just didn't really have the car. I think he had a problem. I don't remember what happened, but I know he had an issue, and he just didn't have the handling on the car later in the race. But early he looked good. He was looking really good at Road America, and then I think it was a transmission issue went out on him. So he ended up not finishing that race, if I remember correctly. But he was up front leading and looking strong. And again, that's with very few starts at that point. He's going to have a full season to try to get into the playoffs. So I think Austin Cindric is, again, he's a wild card, but I don't know how much of a wild card he is because you said it. He's in that 2 car. It's a strong car. And for a lot of the same things I just said about Cindric, I'm going to kind of copy and paste to my next driver, and that's Chase Briscoe. I think he did look fairly strong at the Clash. He was doing some things different than some of the other drivers. He was the only one shifting during qualifying and practices and stuff like that. May have been what toasted the transaxle, I think is what they said happened, but that won't be an every race issue. I think Chase Briscoe is going to find a way to get a win on one of these road courses, or at least do enough to get into the playoffs. But if he doesn't get a win, it's going to be tough because last year was a tough year for that 14 team.
Yeah, I think he's a good candidate for the wild card. I didn't go with him. I went with somebody you already have in the should make it category with Kurt Busch. A veteran, I think, like I've talked about earlier in the episode, somebody that's going to be there to contend with. But my 4th pick, we differ with our 4th pick here. The final spot I gave away was Brad Keselowski. I think because of all the points I made earlier about the veterans and how they potentially will bring along the entire team, I think he is able to get into the playoffs somehow.
Okay. So even if they give you the option to change this based on what you saw at the Clash, you would still stick with Brad?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. All right. My last pick is Justin Haley. I think he's going to be competitive at a lot of races. We've already seen Colleague be competitive last year at races. Look good, obviously, at the Clash. I know a lot of people may be familiar now with the name Justin Haley because he was in like 34, 35 races last year. But he's with Spire. And that was like their secondary car. You know, their main guy was Corey LaJoie, who had better finishes, but not by much compared to Haley. So Haley was always sort of that punt play. Sometimes he'd work out. But man, now that he's in a car capable of winning, or at least capable of being up front, this dude knows how to win super speedway races. Seen him do it in the Xfinity Series. Yeah, he won the rain, lightning Daytona race a couple years ago, and he didn't even lead technically a lap in that race. You know
Daytona,
what I mean.
That's Daytona.
But aside from that, that's not why I'm kind of putting him in there. It's because of how I've seen him run, even in that Spire car at these super speedways. He knows how to get it done there. He's also a heck of a road course driver. I just think that even if it's not through a win, I think they have the capability of pointing their way in, and he's their 1A driver. Their secondary car is going to have like 3 different drivers throughout the year, which is going to be awesome. We're going to see Noah Gragson in that car. Daniel Hemrick will be back in the Cup Series. And then obviously the Dinger will be doing most, if not all, of the road courses. So that's also going to be fun to kind of see. That may actually really screw some of these guys trying to get in, because those are guys that can take wins away.
They go trophy hunting over there at Colleague.
Exactly.
And they will put the driver that best suits the situation in that 16 car, and they'll poach some trophies, and it's going to be interesting to see how that plays. I don't know how many wins they get, but doing 1 or 2 wins even is going to shake things up.
And they also, I don't know how well it'll work in the Cup Series, but I remember last year, I think it was Talladega. I think it was a Talladega race in the Xfinity Series. Coming to the checkered flag, they were 1, 2, and 3. Haley was in third. I think Jeb Burton was in first, and then Dinger was second. And they were all in line. They were working together. They weren't letting anyone by them. And then right after that last corner, Haley makes a move. He gets up high, got the speed, got to the front. I think Jeb ended up finishing fourth, but it was like 1, 2, 4 finish for Colleague Racing because they worked as a unit. Obviously, they'll only have 2 versus 3 cars in the field this year for Cup Series. But, man, if they have that same approach, especially when Allmendinger is in the race because he's already familiar with working with Justin Haley, unless they just have some really bad luck, I think Colleague could be a force this year. Not a Hendrick Motorsports kind of force, but I think that they are going to make their presence felt.
Yeah, they'll shake things up for sure. I think that's where we will finally see it all play together or come together. But that was 16 drivers we talked about, and that's going to be fun to see, look back on and see how it all played out and how wrong we were or how right we were on a couple of these. It potentially we'll find out. But
I'm hoping I at least get 12-ish right. I think if I can get 11 or 12, I'd be pretty happy.
That's batting a pretty good average.
Because there's some good drivers that I didn't put in there, like a Brad Keselowski. I know his talent, so that could bite me a little bit. But if I could finish with about 11 or 12 correct, I think I'd be pretty happy with these picks.
Absolutely. Anything else you want to touch on?
Man, I think this has been a pretty solid little first episode of the season. Definitely excited to be doing this again. Excited to see what these new cars really bring when points are on the line, when races really matter, and then just figuring out the new car, seeing how much or if we're going to have to really change our approach on how we come to certain opinions that we have about the race and where we think the best options are week to week, whether it's DraftKings or Prize Picks. Like, that's going to be kind of a fun new little curveball. Ever since we've really been doing this, NASCAR's kind of been throwing these curveballs. You know, first year we were really kind of covering with our race guide. It was pandemic, so there was like no practice or anything to go off of. Pretty much the same last year, but a few races, we got a few, practice and qualifying sessions in there. But that's something that we've never really seen before with NASCAR. So there was no data going into the race other than previous races, and past results don't always, predict future results or whatever the saying is, So that was definitely a little bit of a challenge, but we adapted, and I know we'll do the same with however this car presents itself this year.
Yeah, I'm excited to go on that week-to-week adventure and be able to bring it to everyone. And we're excited that you're here checking out our second season of doing video content. We're bringing along the podcast as well. This is a full fun adventure that we've been on, and thanks to the support of everyone out there that are members of our Patreon community. We've got a new Kaboom set that we're giving away to all of our Patreon members and all the new subscribers that are taking advantage of our early offers on that platform. But we do this for fun, man, helping people grow their bankroll, and we want to hear from everybody. Just being able to have that feedback on what you want to see week to week, what's working, what's not. We'll be producing the content, and we want to just get that feedback. So if you want to follow us on Twitter, check us out there. The links are below in the description. The subscribe button always helps us out. It always allows us to understand if that content's relative to you, and it just allows us to say, hey, there's people out there that are enjoying the time that we're putting into this, and it's benefiting them.
Yeah, you really hit it. We really do appreciate everyone who watched last year, supported us last year. Anyone who's new, we appreciate you checking us out. Give us a like you said. If nothing else, that helps us out too. Just really excited for Daytona to get here. We're really close. And just to get the season kicked off and just see how things go. I mean, it's kind of the great unknown right now, but I'm about it.
Yeah, and we get started with the Super Bowl of the NASCAR season right out of the gate at Daytona, so we'll have content out there for that. So for the DK Garage, I'm Joe, that's Jeremy, and we'll see you next time.